record, and here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a resident of Lahore, Pakistan. He was born with hyperempathy syndrome. He was therefore a quiet kid at school, never talking with anybody. He just sat in a corner trying to figure out his extreme feelings. Later in his childhood, he was taken by a group of abusers at his school. For the next 3 years, continuously abused him mentally, emotionally, and physically. This left him with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, crippling health, panic attacks, and lots of pain. He committed suicide 3 times in the following 2 years. All of this while his home remained a battleground of its own nature. From the face of this adversity, he found himself walking the path to spirituality. He is now a suicide survivor turned spiritual teacher. He has acquired an uncanny understanding of human emotions through resolving them in his own self. He refers to himself as the broken healer. He now shares his learnings on Instagram, which has reached thousands of people around the world. At 17 years old, he is the author of the poetry book, Unwounded. Welcome to the show, Alamir.
Thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor for me to have you on the show. When I was sent your story, and that's a brief summary of kind of what you've been through, what you've gone through, what you're doing, and I read some of your writings, and I think that they're beautiful. You have an absolutely extraordinary story. It's terrible and awful in so many ways, but you've gone through it all. So if you want to just share as much as you care to share the background, because I think it's important. And I think that most of the audience here being Canada, the US, your upbringing and your environment in the country and everything, all of those are factors. So maybe you can just dive in and share whatever you feel is best to catch people up.
Okay, so I'm starting at where I first became aware of life within me. When I was like 4 years of age, unlike most spiritual teachers, I was not very conscious in my mother's womb. But when I was 4 years of age, I was playing with a group of my cousins, and suddenly one of my cousins, he just took a leaf in one of his hands, out of a plant, and just ripped it off from the plant. And suddenly I literally felt like tremors going across my body, as if my arms were fracturing apart. So that was my first introduction to the world. That's how I became aware of everything that is in this planet. And it's actually been all my childhood, it was like this hurricane of emotions, and I could never make sense of it. It was just one feeling after another, after another, after another. And in that situation, I would never ever talk with anybody because my heartbeats were always racing. I was always having tremors. I was always having these weird kind of headaches, migraines, and every aspect of my body, every single cell in my body was going through some kind of an emotion, an individual emotion. And in that hurricane, I was actually not able to find what was my own feeling. In that situation, I was sent off to school. And there it all got 3 times worse. Everything. It just got so much worse. I remember that one time, I was walking into my classroom, and I had one of these fellow students whose mother had died. And I just felt this strange kind of thing in my own heart, in my own body, as if my mother had passed away. So that was such an insane experience. And I just actually walked out of the classroom. I went to the washroom and I started to cry. And I don't know, when did these people saw me? They were 4 to 5 people who were 18 to 20 to 24. And one of them was 50. So all of these people, they looked at me and they were oh my God, this is such a feminine boy. And that is such a shame. You should not be feminine. A boy cannot cry. So what they actually decided was to man me up. So 3 years, they manned me up. They had me go through all kinds of physical, emotional, and mental abuse, every single one of them. And I wouldn't go into the details of that, but later afterwards, I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm actually like shivering right now, because it is not because like I have like this weird kind of emotion still in me. It's not like I am still like regretting like why did this happen and why did that happen. It is just that whenever I think about that 7-year-old child, it still makes me shiver. It still makes me just go like crazy. Like, how can anybody ever take a 7-year-old and make him go through all kinds of weird things just because they saw him crying one day? But that happened. And when they left me with depression, they left me with anxiety, they left me with suicidal thoughts. Every single day I was thinking about killing myself. Every single day I was thinking about new ways. I was discovering new ways to kill myself. And I was one of the child, like I had internet access. So you know how insane that can be. Like every single second of my life was trying to end it. Every single second of it. Every single second of it, I was just motivated to end it somehow. I used fire. I also even used fire. And I used cuts. I used medicine, every single thing. But somehow I still survived. Somehow I still survived. Every single time I will do something and somebody would just come up at time and just stop me, or someone would just come up at time and like get me to hospital, or like if when I ate medicine, I just had like a vomit and it all came out. So somehow I always survived every single suicide attempt that I have ever done. My family, on the other hand, they were going through their own crisis. Everything was like they like my mom and my dad, they were always fighting, always fighting. So in that kind of situation, like the child gets neglected, you know. And like even though I was like one of the children who had the most attention, still I got no attention when it came to my pain. I got no attention when it came to my happiness, which was actually never there because it just got lost in like that hurricane of emotions. Every single happy moment of my life, it's just been like that. Like I would walk into a room where it's supposed to be happy and it's supposed to be blissful, and I would just feel the negative emotions of the people. I would just feel them within my bones. And when you're feeling that in your bones, you cannot laugh, you cannot do anything. So I got labeled as shy. I got labeled as a sister. Everyone started to call me a transgender as as a form of bullying. They started to call me transgender, not like to identify me with it or to respect it, but like to bully me. So even my own home became like a source of bullying for me. Like even there, I was getting bullied every single second of my life. In all of this situation, and it really has been just insane, everything that has happened. But what I have understood, but what happened, okay, so that this is one of my turning points. So one of my turning points was I was watching a Teal Swan video called How to See Your Aura. So after seeing that video, I just went in front of a mirror. I went in front of a mirror and I just started to look at my body. And as I was looking on my body, suddenly like my body began to dissipate. And there was this dark cloud that surrounded it. And the dark cloud, it merged my whole existence. And I could no longer see my body. And in that situation, in that moment, I actually was forced to make the decision. What is happening to me? Where am I? Who am I? And when those questions arise in you, when those questions actually arise in you, that is where your path begins. That is the day that your journey begins to self-realization. That is the day that your journey begins in spirituality. The day that these three questions arise in you. Where am I? Who am I? And why am I? And those questions, they just came true in that moment. The next 3 years, they have been years of healing, and a lot of healing. I have actually learned to dissociate from human emotion. I've actually learned to dissociate from my thought process. I've learned a lot of things which help me to cope with my ability even today. So that if I choose not to feel somebody, I no longer feel them. But if I choose to embody someone, if I choose to embody somebody, I just experience all of their pain, all of their suffering, all of their happiness, all of their memory, every single signature within my own body. So that's my story.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that we wanted to gloss it. Well, whatever you want to share is fine. But when I read your bio, the bullying that you experienced, it was intense. I think that a lot of people out there in a lot of schools are being bullied in different ways, but yours was extremely severe. I don't know if you want to share just like a couple examples, if you feel like that's necessary, just like, maybe not the details, but like a couple things, because the reason why is you've overcome something that's extraordinary in a lot of senses. Like, I think a lot of people feel like they have pain and they have suffering in their life, and it might be because somebody called them stupid or something small, but yours wasn't small, and you were able to overcome the other side. So that's the only reason why I was going to ask if you were okay to share with one or two, and then go into the process of if you are experiencing bullying and empathy. They call them empaths now, or I like to call it general human beings who care about other human beings and can sense their feelings. But some people feel it a lot more, and you're one of those people. Yeah. I was one of those people growing up as well. It's, I would cry when my brother would cry and he'd get hurt. And, it's like stuff like that. But when you're a boy or you're a man, you're supposed to stuff those feelings aside.
Exactly.
Right. And in your culture, even worse. And so for you to overcome what you did, I think is extraordinary. So maybe you can talk, maybe give a few examples if you wish, and then give some insights on how you were able to, or if somebody's going through that, to start to overcome, and like some sort of mindset that might have helped you as you went through it when you felt like there was no help and there was no way out.
Okay. So some of the examples of what I went through, one of the chief examples was that I was forced to lick vomit off of a floor. They actually made me lick vomit off of a floor. And that was like a very, very dirty floor. Like nobody had washed it in like years. So they had like vomited on it, one of them, and they asked me to lick it clean. So I had to lick it all the way through until it was clean. And another one of the example was I was forced to dance naked in front of them at the age of 8. And another one of the example is that they will lead me through these guided visualizations, like a demonic Louis Hay, So guided visualization where they will actually lead me through this process that today when I will go home, I will have my parents hanging through the ceiling. My sisters and my brother, they will be all dead on the floor and blood will be dripping out of them. And it's all over the ground. So these are a few of the examples, but definitely there is more. Like they hit me with a belt and they told me like, why do you do this? Like you need to man yourself up and you need to correct yourself up and you're so bad and you're so wrong and you're this and you're that, like every single thing. Like they will constantly tell me what is wrong with me in every single way. They will tell me that my body is wrong. They will tell me that my emotions are wrong. They will tell me that what I'm thinking is wrong. They will tell me that what I'm doing is wrong. They will tell me that everything about me is wrong. And in that condition, I used to think myself as the most sinful human being on the planet. And I thought that this was my atonement, that I was going through my atonement so that God could love me. so that I can become lovable for God. It is ironic because I think that God loves us most the way that He created us. You know, God does not require us to change ourselves to love us. God will love you the way you are, the way that you were born, the way that you were created. So one of the chief questions that I have for people who bully other people is just this. If you have a problem with the design, why do you bully the human beings? Why do you bully those people who are designed that way? Why don't you go and fight the designer? If you have the problem with the creation, go and fight the creator. You're talking about God, right? So if you have a problem the way that God created me or the way that God created anybody else, just go and fight him. Why are you hurting us? Why are you hurting other human beings? It doesn't make any sense. And if somebody is listening to me who is actually going through some of the intense bullying, I really don't think that there is much that I can say to help them right now, but I can say them this one thing, and I know that this is super cliche, but I can tell them from my own experience that it will get better. It will get better. And they will not stay here forever. In that moment, I used to think that I will be abused forever and ever and ever. Like never in my life will this stop. But when that moment came, that everything stopped. I couldn't believe myself. And then I punished myself 3 years. Just this. Like I couldn't stop where they stopped. I kept going on and on and on. And that's the depression, and that's the anxiety, and that's the panic attacks, and that's the suicidal thoughts. I kept going and on and on and on, even when they stopped. So if you are in such a severe condition, one of the things is go and tell someone. I didn't tell someone because I had my own like thing where I could not bring myself to go and talk about this to anybody. Not because like, oh my God, like I was shy or this or that. I couldn't go and talk to somebody because I knew that then these people will get hurt. And I couldn't get myself to do that. I couldn't. And that is the day where I was like, this is such a curse. This feeling that I'm feeling, this is such a curse. Like I cannot even go and tell somebody that I am being abused because I'm actually empathizing with my abusers. Like when they will come near me and they will shout me in my head, you're so wrong, you're so evil, you're this, you're that. I would actually be thinking about what they have gone through in their childhood. Like what have they gone through to make them like that? And I would be empathizing with that. And I would be thinking about the ways that I can help them. And I don't know if that was like a curse thing or a gift thing, but I can tell you this, not many people who are getting bullied are like that. So if you're not like that, go and tell someone. Go and tell anybody. Go and tell your teacher. Go and tell your principal. Go and tell your parents. Anybody. No matter what barriers there are, just go and tell someone that this intensely things are happening. Go tell somebody. Go share it with someone. If not a parent, if not a sibling, if not a teacher, go and tell a friend. And even if you cannot tell a friend, go and tell a tree. Go and tell something else. Go and just shout it out to the sky. Go and shout it out to the ground. Someone, something. Just go and let it out to someone. Somebody, let them know. And just believe me from my own story that it will stop and that it will get better. And once it stops, don't carry it with you. Because that is going to be one hell of a burden.
Man, that's so intense. You know, what you're kind of talking about is like a rapid awakening. I feel like people experience that in mild degrees throughout their life, like a little bit of bullying, a little bit of put downs, a little bit of trauma, and then they carry that around their entire life like luggage. And what
Yes.
it seems like for me is that you just, and a lot of people that become spiritual teachers or have spiritual writings, a lot of them have extraordinary circumstances. And one of them that comes to mind is that Wayne Dyer was telling a story, and I can't remember this woman's name, but she was in the Rwanda massacre, and she was hiding in a bathtub. And she had to think like 8 other different people with her. And then everybody she knew was getting slaughtered. And this one family was hiding her and 8 other people for 30
Oh my
days.
God.
And she said at one point they were knocking on the door to come in. They said they knew they were there, and she thought she was going to die. And she could feel the machete going into her body. Like she actually felt it. Then the next day after that, she somehow, similar to what you were saying, felt like the compassion and the empathy and the forgiveness for the people abusing that had just killed all of her family. It's a truly extraordinary story. If anybody knows that book or that person, I got to find it. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's unbelievable. And it's kind of similar to what you're talking about, is you're forced in this like extraordinary circumstance that people don't have to deal with. And it's like this massive tumble of like an awakening of like cracking the shell and almost not identifying with this external thing, right? Because what you're talking about is validation. You're not good enough. You should be like this. This is the way it is. And that's kind of the world we live in, but yours is in your face every single day. And we believe that on micro levels. We all believe that on micro levels. And the idea to become awakened and enlightened is to take the inventory back in and the power back in to understand who you really are and ask those 3 questions. So I'm just curious if you can, did you come up with a conclusion with where am I, who am I, why am I? Did you just explore that forever? Or did you come with a conclusion? And what are some of the insights that you have now being on the other side and like dropping that luggage? Because that's extraordinarily hard to do. People hold on to that pain and that luggage like it's their favorite, most sentimental item forever until their 90s. So just wondering if you could speak on that.
Okay. So first, coming to the 3 absolutely abused questions, the most abused questions in the self-help industry. Who am I? Where am I? And why am I? I think when it comes to where am I, the answer is you are the somethingness in nothingness. That's where you are. You are at a something in a large quantity of nothingness, in a large stream of nothingness. And this is what in the Buddhist culture they refer to as nirvana, nothingness. Or in the Sufi culture, they refer to it as fana, nothingness. Or in the Indian culture, the yogic culture, they refer to it as Shiva. Once again, that which is not. So what is life? What is happening? What is existence? What is physical? Is just a small happening in the lap of that nothingness. And that's something, it is very, very limited because it has a boundary. Whatever has a boundary is limited. So, but what that nothingness is that it is boundless. It is absolutely like an ocean. It has no barriers. It has no barriers, it has no boundaries, nothing. It just goes on and on and on. So where am I? I am a tiny little speck on a tiny little planet, in a tiny little galaxy, in a tiny little universe, in a massive nothingness. That's where am I? Now, the next question, why am I? I think the question, why am I, is once again, it is arising from this sort of like trying to find a sense of purpose in life. You're trying to find a purpose in life. What is my purpose? Everyone wants a purpose. What I'm trying to bring, and this is one of my quotations, that life has no purpose. It is the purpose. So why am I? You're here to experience life. That's it. You're not here to help anybody. You're not here to do this. You're not here to start a foundation. You're not here to like sit on a throne and rule or lead. You're not here to sing. You're not here to do anything. You're here just to experience life. This is why you are here. You're here to experience life because the way that you experience life, By you experiencing life, what we are referring to as nothingness, it requires a new awareness. A new consciousness arises within that nothingness when you become aware, when you live life, when you experience life to its fullest extent. So that is the purpose of life. Why are you here? You're here to live life to the fullest potential. That's why you are here. And then, who am I? I think this is a question like, who am I? I'm no one. This is the truth. And I know like that is the hard thing to understand, but that is the truth, that I am nothing. I would love to say that I am a poet. I would love to say that I am a mystic. I would love to say that I am a broken healer, as I call myself also. But all these words, they are only to identify myself for a certain period of time, so that when I'm talking with you or when I'm talking with anybody else, they can have an identification with me. But when you remove that identification, when slowly you begin to remove all the barriers, and one of the barrier is this physical body. This is the barrier. This is also a boundary, isn't it? Like this physical body, it's also a boundary. So when we are talking, you're slowly like taking away all the boundaries. And when you take away all the boundaries, what is left? Nothing. Because it is, when something has a boundary, it is something. But when it has no boundary, it's everything and nothing. So that's what I am. I am no one and I am everyone. So this is the answer to those three questions. But I don't want you to take these at philosophical face value. I don't want you to do that. I want for every human being, and I wish every human being the capacity to experience this firsthand. And I don't want you to believe this before the day that you experience it yourself. But the day that you will see it, that's when you will see it. That's when you will know it. Like I can tell you everything, but it doesn't matter. What do you know? What is your awareness? What is your consciousness? That is what matters. So this is it. This is also the only step, self-awareness, consciousness. When you're self-aware, slowly, aspect after aspect, you keep becoming self-aware, more and more aware of yourself, till you realize that there is no self. This is realization. This is self-realization. This is the path of the yogi. This is the path of the Buddha. This is the path of a Sufi. This is the path of a mystic. This is it. You keep uncovering one aspect and another aspect and another aspect and another aspect, taking down everything which you are not, one after another, one after another. And the last thing that you take down is your body. The last thing that you take down is your mind. And after that, you're nothing and you're everyone. So that's the truth of existence. How do you get there? Consciousness, awareness, self-awareness. This is how you get there.
I like it. It reminds me of Alan Watts. And Alan Watts, he says that, you know, when you realize you die, life either becomes a serious game or a play. You know, the purpose of life is just to be alive. So he's like, that's how simple it is. It's just to be alive.
Yes, it is very simple.
And so what I think, yes,
we complicate it. We complicate it with our graduations. Oh my God, this degree, it's everything. Oh my God, this relationship, it's everything. Oh my God, this job, it's everything. Oh my God, this car, it's everything. But then you get it and you realize it's nothing. It's just another tiny speck in a tiny little planet, in a tiny little galaxy, in a tiny little universe. And when you realize that, it doesn't matter anymore. That car doesn't matter anymore. The job will not matter anymore. It only matters when you don't have it, because you think that this is your expansion. You think that this is your limitlessness. But once you get it, you realize that even that has a limit. And that's when you're like, okay, so what do we do with this? We are still limited. And that's when the question arises of spiritual path. That is when the question arises that, okay, so now we are talking spirituality. We're talking limitlessness. We're talking boundlessness. In the physical body, there is no such thing as boundlessness. In the mental body, there is no such thing as boundlessness. So you have to go beyond that. And when you go beyond that, when there is this distance that comes within you, the body, the mind, the emotion, and this is how I do it. This is how I manage my empathy now, because there is this distance between me and my emotion, me and my thought, me and my body. You know, like in the Western self-help culture, they give a lot of attention to the human thought. Extreme, like positive thinking. Just think it's a beautiful day, and it's a beautiful day. It's not. Like seriously, it doesn't make it a beautiful day. Just thinking, oh my God, it's a beautiful day. Look, the sun is out. What if on that very day you get raped? What then? Is it still a beautiful day? You just go and say, oh, just think positively. Just think flowers and pink rainbows and hippies and stuff like that, and everything will be fine. Just like I read the most absolute blunder like a few days ago on Instagram. It just said, here's how to be happy. Just wake up and decide that you are in a good mood today. That's it. There you go. That's the code of life. Just wake up and decide that you're in a good mood all day. Boom. Buddha was lying. Buddha was lying. This is the truth. Just decide that you're in a good mood, and whatever happens, you just stay in a good mood. No, that's not true. If you are always in a good mood, then it means there is no possibility of growth. From good mood, no growth can arise. If the growth has to arise, you have to go through the worst. That's where the growth happens. And this is why with human growth, the Buddhist philosophy always uses the lotus as an example, because it arises out of shit. Yes, it arises out of shit. So what the human experience also arises out of negative. When you resolve the negative, that is when you grow. And this is why you have to evolve. This is the way that you evolve. If you keep being positive and just decide that you're in a good mood, you are only going to bypass reality. This is what I refer to as toxic spirituality, by the way. Toxic spirituality has two parts. First part is used to surpass reality, go beyond the reality. And then there is the other part, which is used to bypass the reality. Surpass the reality. There are these like yogic postures and meditation and this, that, like 15-minute meditation, and it's all done and stuff like that. So this is surpassing reality. You're actually creating a different kind of a space away from reality. You're still not blissful in your experience of reality. You're creating it away from you, a mental space away from you where you are happy. And then when you come out of the meditation, boom, it's all the same thing again. But for that 15-minute, you experience that calmness or that peacefulness. So this is the type of spirituality which is used to surpass reality. And then there is the other part which is used to bypass reality, which is this positive thinking and shift the focus philosophy, which is absolutely bullshit. For example, if you are in a room and it's like a dirty room, like a very, very dirty room, and you just say, oh, you just shift your focus and it's all going to be clean. No, it's not going to be clean. If you have to clean that room, you have to recognize the dirt in it. You have to recognize where it's messed up. And then you have to resolve that. And unless you resolve that, it won't get cleaned. So that's how you do it. You first of all accept it. You accept the reality of the current moment. And then you go ahead and then you embrace it. You allow it. You allow it to flow through you. And then the third thing, which is you integrate it. Integration means you take it as a part of yourself. What is the resolution? What is the message it is trying to bring? You bring that message into your awareness. You resolve the situation. This is integration. And then the fourth thing, you let go. This is one of the most essential steps, letting go. If you don't let go, integration will become poison. So that's how you do it. That's how I did it, at least.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You nailed a lot of good points there. What I immediately thought of was alchemy, and most people will think of alchemy as lead to gold, but the actual alchemical process is filtering through your dirt. It's going through all of that stuff, finding the corners in your own house, your own body, your own mind that are dirty, and then you just kind of, you grab the brush out and you kind of go through it. And I totally agree. And I've actually never heard somebody, kind of point out those two things, the toxic spirituality, because I've heard of spiritual bypass, and then I've had people accuse me of spiritual bypass as they're doing it, and I'm just like, what is happening? It's like, because you get confused, and there's people just do different things, and who knows, maybe I'm spiritual bypassing. I don't freaking know, man. I'm just doing my best. But that's a very good way to put it, because I think that, in the law of attraction, positive thinking, it can go a little bit too far sometimes. And when you talked about removing the layers, you touched on this a little bit. I kind of want to get into that. You remove the layers of self. So I got to remove podcast host, athlete, writer, now flute player, which I suck at, but that's an identity too. Could be awesome compared to somebody else. So all these identities of me to get into the oneness mind, the non-local, the being alive like a child mind, But then on the other side, we're sitting here and we're creating, and there is this impulse to create with our intention. So I'm going to throw some stuff at you and you can pick out what you like. So where do we go with the impulse to create, to have a family, to provide for that family, to do the things as we're impulsing from this more positive state? And then I kind of wanted you to touch on a little bit of the, the law of attraction, positive thinking, change the world. Cause I'm guilty of that for sure. I want to change the world and try to make the world a better place. And I can say, my mindset does make an impact and my actions can make an impact, but there are parts of the world like you live in, it's pretty messed up. So if somebody comes over here with a law of attraction idea that might be a little bit more, I don't know if you'd say left side or right side, but let's just say hippie butterflies thing. It's just like, oh, well, you're fine. Those abusers, you just literally got to think it's all good and you're totally hunky dory. They have no idea what you're dealing with over there. It's intense. And so what would you suggest to maybe your own culture or educate our culture a little bit into how to feel peace in a challenging situation and everything else that I said? There's a lot of stuff there. So you pick up what you'd like.
Okay. First of all, coming to the self. So when you look at the self in the yogic culture, I'm going to use the help of the yogic culture right here. In the yogic culture, we recognize 4 aspects of yourself. The first aspect is your buddhi, which is your intellect. So your intellect is basically what you gather. Whatever you have, based on that information, you create data within your mind. And using that data, your intellect functions. It cannot ever go beyond that, right? So this is it. So the intellect, when you transcend the intellect, we call you a Buddha. Then you're a Buddha. If you transcend the buddhi, then you're a Buddha. The next aspect of the human identity is ego, ahankara. Ahankara means that this is everything. This is the podcast host. This is the athlete. This is the Zen athlete. This is the motivational speaker. This is all of those. This is your ego. I'm sorry to say that, but this is your ego. All of these are your ego. These are your identities that you have gathered from around you, right? So when you look at it, you really realize, when you actually really look at it, that they are never there, that they were never there, and they will never ever be there unless you imagine them. You're simply imagining them. It is you who is putting them out there. If you don't put them out there, they are not there. You choose to identify yourself as a Zen athlete. If you don't choose to identify yourself as a Zen athlete, you're just another man. You're not a Zen athlete. So this is the truth of your essence. This is the truth of your existence. That beyond this, whatever your identity is memory. Now, your memory, your identity, or your ego is basically formed around your memory. So whatever memory, whatever experiences you've had, whatever like you've learned, whatever you've gathered, this, that, you're just going to build it up in an ego. And then based on that ego, your intellect will function. So these are the three aspects of why are these three aspects? These three aspects are here to help you with survival. If they are not there, you cannot survive. Trust me, and trust me on this. If a yogi walks from Himalayas and comes in the modern society, he will not be able to survive. There is no possibility of him being able to survive because he has none of these three. So you have to have these three to survive. If you're anything else, if you're an animal, if you're a wolf, if you're a dog, if you're a cat, if you're a bird, there are certain survival things. Once they have been taken care of, everything is well. You don't want anymore. But in other words, we can say that their life ends at survival process. But human life is different. Human life begins at the end of survival process. It is only when your survival process ends, that is when your real life begins. And that is the fourth aspect, chitta, or consciousness. So what is consciousness? Let's dive into that, because that is what will explain a lot of things. What is consciousness? Consciousness is not awareness. Awareness is a different thing. Consciousness is a different thing. What you're referring to as the consciousness is the source of creation within you. Let me give you an example. What did you eat today?
I ate some Special K, some eggs.
Okay, so you ate eggs. Which animal did they belong to?
Chicken.
Okay, chicken eggs. So you ate chicken eggs, and there is an intelligence within your body which turned it into a human being, which digested it, assimilated it, and now it is a human being. We cannot recognize that egg within you. So there are countless amount of such things where you ate a bread and we can no longer recognize it in you. Where has it gone? It became a human being. It became a human body. So this intelligence within you, which can turn a chicken egg into a human being in a few hours. Imagine if you could touch that with awareness. It is happening unconsciously right now. You're not aware of it. But imagine if you can touch it with awareness. How will your life be? Your life will be magic. Yes, isn't it? I mean, Charles Darwin is saying there have been thousands and thousands of years which take for evolution to happen, for one thing to become another thing. And look at you. You have done this overnight. You've done this in a few hours. So isn't that magical? This is magic. So this aspect of you, which is the source of creation within you, which just knows how to function, which has no knowledge, no memory, nothing, but it is the source of everything, which is you. That is consciousness. And when you touch it with awareness, that's when your life actually blossoms. So this is the self thing. So it is only when your ego will go away, when the Zen athlete will go away, that the infinite being will appear. For the infinite being to appear, the Zen athlete will have to disappear. Just like even in my life, like there were a lot of identities that I was forcing myself on, that I was forcing on myself. But it is only when they go away, that is when the infinite being appears. So if the infinite has to appear, these little thingies have to go away. They have to run away. If they are there, it will not work. Now, touching on the law of attraction thing. The law of attraction is also the ego drama. It's just more and more ego. What is ego? Ego is a false sense of self. It's false. It's imagined. It's not real. And whatever is imagined, we imagine things for two reasons. I will go back to that. To bypass reality or to surpass reality. To go beyond it or to stay away from it. So these are the two reasons that we imagine different things. So in the law of attraction, you imagine positive things. It is for the sake of staying out of reality. So reality is one thing, and what you are is another thing, right? So this is law of attraction. What they are referring to as law of attraction is whatever you will vibe at, you will receive. This is actually, in my opinion, this is one of the lazy man's concept. Just sit and think flower, 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 and it will appear. No, it will not appear. It comes from a different kind of consciousness. Like it comes from a different kind of understanding. Like, you know, like in a lot of mystical people, a lot of occultists, they would just do this. They would sit there and they would think flower, 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 and a flower will appear. So some of the people picked it up. They think that if you just think flower, 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 it will come here. No. What they don't understand is the amount of process that it has taken for that man to bring it to such a level that one of his thought is so powerful that it meant that it changes, that it shifts the fabric of reality. They don't recognize that in the law of attraction thing. So the law of attraction, is it real? Yes, it is real on a certain level. But when you look at the physical level, it is not real. In the physical level, you don't think flower, 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 and it appears. In the physical world, you think flower, and then you shift your focus, then you think soil, then you think seed, then you think water, and then you implement them. You put the seed in the soil, you water it, every day you take more and more care of it, and then a flower will appear. So in the West, there is a lot of this goal-oriented thinking. The process, nobody cares about the process, but the process is the most essential. You can't think mango, 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 and get a mango. You're only gonna get Django. So it won't work. So if you want a mango, go through the process. Bury the seed, let it come out, let it blossom. And then when it blossoms, take care of it. Just be there, unconditionally present with it as it slowly grows out and then blossoms and then turns into a fruit. So that is the spiritual process. The spiritual process is not here to bypass reality. The spiritual process is not here to surpass reality. It is to live in reality profoundly. This is spirituality. Everything else, it is just hogwash. It is marketing material. That's all. It's good marketing material because it feels good for some time. But in the longer run, it will destroy you because it will take you away from your truth. What if I'm actually literally feeling crap right now? I still have to think positive just to have a good day? No. Don't think positive just to have a good day, just for the sake of having a good day. When things change within you, you will be positive, you will have a good day by nature. You will not have to implement that. You will not have to think your way to that. It will just happen to you naturally. So that's what I have. I believe in the law of action, not the law of attraction.
Man, well, I agree. I'd say I agree with almost all of that. There's some things that I would probably tweak a little bit in my own perception, but 90% I'm definitely on board with, because what I think is happening is that we need to be more fully immersed in reality. And I think that we're looking for all of these ways to get out of reality through imagination, through these different things, you know what I mean? And not accept what is actually happening and being in the body. And one of the things that I like to say is like, this is the space and the consciousness and the dimension and everything that you want to be in. Be in it as fully and as actively and as present as you can. Like absolutely like get into it, you know, like and enjoy it and explore it and watch life unfold. And you're talking about a lot of really deep concepts here and putting them in really beautiful and simple ways. And I think they're touching on big things. So what I want to ask you then is, you know, if we're sitting here in these levels of consciousness, you know, and we want to touch that magic bit, you know what I mean? That thing that's beyond. Some people call it the non-local mind. Some people will call it God. Some people will call it whatever.
There are a lot of words.
Infinite words, you know, you probably have a whole bunch of different sounds.
Problem. That's the problem.
What is the problem?
That there are so many words.
Do you have one word?
Take away the words. Let there be silence. And in that silence, in that emptiness, this will become clear. Take away the words. Take away the non-local mind. Take away the no mind. Take away all of these things. Take away the God. Take away every single thing. Be empty. Be silent. And in that silence, in that emptiness, the whole universe will arise.
Well, that's, to me, meditation. And I agree with that. Like when you try, like Alan Watts will talk about, like when you try, it's like the knife trying to cut itself. You know, there's no way that you're going to explain it with words. It's just not going to happen. So what I'm curious about is, can you give your feedback or your suggestion on how somebody can actually feel that or experience that within themselves? And then I wanted to open it up because we were talking about it a little bit before the show. You live in a different part of the world, having different circumstances. You're telling me before that, you know, you can get in trouble if you just like write something on Facebook, which is crazy. But you've also had some pretty intense experiences. And I think that when the consciousness opens up to a new reality, the simplest way that I phrase it, it's a 4-minute mile. When some people, one person broke the 4-minute mile, now everything becomes possible. And when you touch these states of consciousness or force or awareness or whatever you want to call it, there are different realities that start to form. You have different experiences. And I don't know if you want to share any of those, but what I would like to suggest is just any insight on helping people access this thing, because, you know, some people are like, hey, I got to meditate super hard, right? And that's kind of the practice. And then there's the analytical, because we're trying to do the process, and that's not exactly it. So just feedback on how they might explore this journey, and then what might be possible after. What do you believe is possible? I've heard of Greg Braden talk about a yogi put his hand through a rock somewhere, and I guess there's this hand, he's still in the rock. And I've heard some pretty wild stories, and I don't know which of them are true, if it's somebody doing it with their own consciousness, if it's technology or what, but I've experienced some weirdness, and I don't know what's possible, but I know it's beyond anything that I could ever imagine.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that we are starting with, I guess, is how do you touch this consciousness? I think there is no official way to touch this consciousness. There is no official way, because there is no way. There is no way because there is no journey. That's what Buddha said. Buddha said, all that there is, it is right here. And what is not right here, it is nowhere. So what you're referring to as consciousness, which is the only somethingness in the nothingness, you're talking about something which is right here. So you don't have to go to that place. You don't have to go through a way. You just have to clear out every barrier that you have built within yourself. This reminds me of one of quotations by Rumi. Do you know Rumi? So yeah, Rumi said that you don't have to go looking for love. When he was talking about love, he was actually talking about the infinite nature of things. So you don't have to go looking for love. You just have to destroy all the barriers that you have built within yourself against it. So that's it. How do you touch this consciousness? You don't do this thing. You don't do an occult process. There are many occult processes. They have different kind of factors, and they have different kind of implications and different kind of applications. But that's different. They will never take you to consciousness. And that's one of the bombs for the New Age community. Because a lot of New Agers think that if they get crystals, they are touching the consciousness, the higher states of consciousness, you know, but that is not possible, because they can definitely feel good. They can definitely feel good because they have a different kind of a vibration, and they can alter your energy. But when you're talking about consciousness, we are even talking beyond the energy. So how do you touch this? You touch this by removing everything away which is not it. Only when all of that goes away, it will appear. It will appear by itself, by nature. You don't have to force it. You don't have to meditate really super hard. Because, and trust me, this is one of the things that you must never do. If you meditate too hard, you're only gonna go bonkers. You're gonna go insane. That's it. You're only gonna it's self-abuse actually. If you meditate super hard, it's self-abuse. It is equal to every other kind of abuse that a man can inflict on himself. Why? Because meditation is actually going extremely deep within your mind. So if you force yourself to go in that aspect, which you are not ready for, it's abuse. So you have to get ready step by step. So there is no clear path like chant this and you are going to touch the consciousness, or just go to the Himalayas and you're going to touch the consciousness, or just do something else and you're going to touch the consciousness. There is only one way to touch the consciousness, and that is to take away everything which is not the consciousness. As I said before, take away the boundaries, one boundary after another. First boundary, I am a Pakistani, I am an American. As soon as I say I am a Pakistani, I have already identified myself different from the rest of everything. If you have identified yourself as different from the rest of everything, how are you going to achieve union with it? It's impossible. So what we're talking about consciousness, we always talk about this, that everything becomes a part of your reality. Everything becomes a part of your experience. So how is that going to happen if the American still lives in you, if the British person still lives in you? And this is one of the things that actually a lot of people are like, oh my God, he's like against Pakistan and he's against America and he's against this country and that country. I'm not against any country. I'm against the border. If you want to touch the infinity, you have to go beyond the border. Every border. First border is this, your country. Then there is your job. Then there is your relationships. Then there is every other aspect in your life. Every other thing, even your gender. Even your gender is a boundary. And then there is the boundary of human and God. And that's the final boundary. That's the final boundary. Once that boundary vanishes, then you will touch consciousness. So just keep like taking away all the boundaries. That's it. That's how you touch the consciousness. And I forgot what you were asking me next.
That was a really good answer. I like that. Take away the boundaries. You're kind of like, when you're talking, I remember reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts, and I thought it was going to be like a Zen-y book and an easy read, and it was like one of the hardest books I've ever read.
Yeah.
But he has a lot of analogies, and similar to what you're saying, removing the boundary. There is no try. You don't need to go meditate it away. It's a process of letting go, and it's a bit of a mind F to listen to it, because it's like we're conditioned to do the how.
It's not. I have.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I have one statement.
Go ahead.
It's not about being mindful. It's about being mindless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the way that we're programmed, we want to solve problems. And even someone that I was working with, as she became more and more clear, she noticed that if she didn't do anything, her mind would just create problems for her to solve, because that's kind of like a program that we're set, that we're becoming aware of, so we can just drop that. We want to be always doing something, always trying to get to that goal, because then we feel purposeful. But then you look at a 3-year-old kid that's just like in the grass and looking at the sun and making forts and just fully being alive and putting mud on their face. That's kind of the essence that we want to touch. And if we can kind of get to that state, we're going to be living more naturally from where we are and who we are. And it can be challenging in the matrix that we're in, with all of the task lists and the things we got to do, and the kids crying and they want to go to football and whatever the case is. But what I wanted to touch on, because I am personally curious about human potential. I'm curious about multiple dimensions. I'm curious about what the heck is going on here on our planet. I'm curious about what happens after. I'm curious about the limits of our reality. And I'm just curious, from what you see in your part of the world and what you've experienced in your life, I feel like it opens up a new gateway when you're able to touch this space where different things can happen that most people might think are a little bit unbelievable. And I'm just curious, as you've gone into this space and things have changed for you, like when you had that shift, did things happen in your life that were a little bit unexplainable? And what do you think is possible for a human to get to on this planet? Like, for example, in the autobiography of a yogi, Yogananda's master flies in as an orb and then materializes in front of him. And Yogananda is like, what the heck? And then he explains for 3 pages on how this is possible in, a pretty coherent thought form. So, I just wanted to level up for you, because you're 17, you're like the next generation. And I had all these thoughts when I was like 17. It was like exploring books and seeing what was out there and, trying to figure out what's possible, meditate with monks in Nepal. That it wasn't it. It didn't make me enlightened. I tried. I went to the Himalayas. I tried. I gave it a shot. Didn't work. So I'm just curious where you are with the realm of possibility as being a human on this planet, what the species is capable of and what the individual is capable of.
Everything. There is no such thing in nature as an impossibility. There is no such thing. There is only unrealized potential. That's it. There is no such thing as an impossible thing. For example, let me give you an example. In the ancient times, like this is one of the example. In the ancient times, even in the course of the king, like the king will not get something like who is a quack. Like if common people are going to somebody like that, that makes sense. But if the king has somebody like that in his court, that makes no sense. So it was absolutely clear that the king made sure that this person was actually like really right on what he was saying. So in the ancient traditions, there was always an occultist in the palace, and there was always an occultist that went with the army. There was an occultist which like sat in the center of the town. It was and this was like in all the civilizations, this was happening. An occultist sat down in the palace, and occultists sat down on the street, and occultists went with the army. For what good reason? So the reason was to transmit information, because for a lot of times it was impossible to transmit information like through a horse or through a messenger, because it would take days. So they used an occultist as a quick fix. But that was absolutely unreliable and inconvenient, because you cannot judge the skill of the occultist, how much powerfully he transmitted the thought, and how much receptive the other person was to that thought. So it got a lot of variations as it reached that person. So what an occultist essentially does is that he tampers with the energies of the universe to create a certain kind of a vision or a certain kind of a dream for that person, or a certain kind of a thought in his mind, which is just coming again and again and again, and it doesn't go away. So this is how in the ancient time they transmitted information. But in the medieval ages, when occultists went away, then the horses and the messengers and things like that, they went more common. But far before that, we're talking civilizations, ancient civilizations. We're talking ancient Egypt. We're talking ancient India. We're talking all these places. They use occultists to do these kind of things. But today we have a mobile phone, which is far more convenient, far more reliable, and no matter how idiotic you are, you're gonna get the message just the way I want you to get it, right? There isn't going to be any kind of tampering. So it's become easier. It's become more sophisticated. It's the same thing, but it's become more sophisticated. What was once through the non-physical, to the metaphysical, has now become very physical. Now we are using radio waves. At that time, we were using energy. About what can be done, and can a human being fly? Can a human being teleport? I mean, like half of those things, they've already happened. The human beings are already flying, right? They are already flying. I mean, if it can happen physically, why can't it happen non-physically? But just like there is a physical way to go, just like there is a physical vehicle, like you cannot fly without an airplane, you cannot fly without an energetic vehicle. So those energetic vehicles, you talked about the orb. So this is what the orb is about. And this is what the Merkaba is about. I think you've heard about the Merkaba. So this is what the Merkaba is about as well. So all these spiritual symbols, these are actually ways that you can do these things. They are vehicles. They're energetic vehicles. Just like there is a way to, there are physical vehicles to do physical things. There are energetic vehicles to accomplish energetic things. Like Reiki, for example, like energy healing, these kind of modalities. So they are there so that you can create a certain kind of an experience. So this is what it is about. What is possible? Everything is possible. Why is not anything possible? Why is not anything possible? Oh, sorry. Why? I'm so sorry. I totally messed up. How? I cannot gather words. So okay, you get the point. There is nothing which is impossible. There is only unrealized potential. If you realize that potential, anything is possible, no matter what it is. Until the two brothers, I don't remember their name, until they realize that potential to fly, to have an airplane, to make an airplane, it seems impossible. Everybody made fun of them. In fact, when they would talk about it, everyone like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? You are all crazy people. This is impossible. A human being cannot fly. But they made it possible. So what is impossible is only unrealized potential that is still unconscious in the source stream. As soon as it becomes conscious, it becomes a possibility. The only thing which is impossible is that which is still unconsciously present in the source stream. Once it becomes conscious, once it becomes present, it becomes possible. So everything is possible. That's the human potential. And that's only the human potential. I want you to also see this. Why? Because every other creature on the planet is a compulsive being. There are compulsive cycles of life, and they can never go beyond that. If they go beyond that, they will die. A human being only lives when he goes beyond those cycles. So those compulsive cycles, when you're a human being, what you can do, for example, the compulsive cycles of the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse, the planets, the retrogrades, they all affect you. Yes, they affect you, but you can go beyond them. You have the power to break the cycle. You don't have to be compulsive. You don't have to be influenced. You can influence. That's the difference between animals and humans, between minerals and humans, between everything else in existence and humans. Humans have the power to be conscious, where everything else is compulsive. The only difference is compulsiveness and consciousness. But if that consciousness is not realized, then you are an animal. You're a walking, talking animal. Only if that consciousness is realized, then you become a true human being. And not even talk, and I think we should not even talk about human potential, because 90% of us are not even human beings. In that sense, 90% of us are not even human beings. Yes, we look as human beings, but is our experience of reality conscious or unconscious? 99% experience of reality for 90% of people is unconscious. It means 99% they are animals. What can you expect from animals? What can you expect from animals? You can walk down the street and see that. You can see that in America, even in America, with the current political climate and everything else. I don't want to go in details about it, what's right and what's wrong, because that is going to raise a lot of stuff. So I'm not going to go in there. But what you see is that this is everywhere. When 90% of the human population is actually animal, but the problem is they have human resources. The mind, the brain, this is a human resource. This is supposed to be only active with consciousness. But most people are unconscious, but they still have the mind. So they still have the human resource. So that's why you see so much destruction in the world. That's why you see the wars.
Well, I definitely agree with the unconsciousness part. And I don't know if you can hear me. You froze up for a second, so hopefully you'll come back in. But I'm just going to keep talking, assuming you're going to come back in and you can hear this. But with the unconsciousness, I think that what happens in the society we live in is just that you got to get a job and you got to do this and you got to do the task list. And what happens is that you basically get caught in, could you hear all that? You froze up. I was hoping you could.
So sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, I was just okay. So I'll just rephrase what I was saying. You're back in. I agree with what you're saying about the unconscious thing, because the way that I think that a lot of the Western society and Europe and the developed countries, we wake up and we basically go find money, and you go grab your coffee and you basically run in this route, and it's like I don't have any time to think about what I'm passionate about or what I enjoy or how to have fun. You're on autopilot. Yeah, exactly. And so I think our culture is designed that way to create these people because, the Industrial Revolution just happened and we needed workers. And I think that in society, we've been a worker class. And, I just say it's like kind of modern day slavery with money, because you got to go get those tokens so we can get food, so we can have roof over our head. But, through free will choice, you probably wouldn't be exactly where your job is. You wouldn't be in that cubicle. You wouldn't be in that space. Whatever the case is, but it kind of becomes a necessary evil because you're trying to survive and get a sandwich and figure out life. So it becomes a challenge. So I totally relate with that. And I think that, it is a process. It's a different way of thinking about life so that it gives you a little bit more emotional freedom. And what you talked about earlier was that space between. So somebody says, Matt, your podcast sucks. And then I have this little bit of space that I don't have to like kind of take it personally all of a sudden and be like, oh, I feel like a loser. Or like, Matt, you got to go work 40 hours a week and this is the only way you can make a living. And that one I had a lot more space and resistance to. I was just like, hell no. I am definitely, why are you signing up for 40 hours a week? Some of you guys are like excited about overtime. That blows my mind. But they're trying to acquire these things. So I do think it's a balance, because we're kind of like, if this is a simulation, if it's a video game, if whatever it is, we're in like a challenging one, you know what I mean? And we put ourselves in different spots, but we have all of the tools necessary to overcome whatever circumstance that we are in. It's through our imagination and working with that, divine force, that consciousness, that thing is on your side and that is in you. And if it is in you, then you can do anything, like we said, and we can realize the potential, but we have to first imagine what our potential is. And so, I was curious. I just went to Egypt and it was a very fascinating experience. And do you want to talk on that? You look like you want to chime in. If you want to chime in, go for it.
I was just saying that you cannot realize what you're not aware of. So most people, they're not even aware that there is a consciousness. And when I say aware, I don't mean like they have read a book or they have read a scripture or they have heard a teacher. I mean they have not even once in their life experienced something which touched their soul. So that's one thing. That's one thing. Okay, you talked about how do we touch this consciousness. I think like that's one thing, which is not actually like a way, but like it can influence this. Go and get your soul touched by anything. It doesn't matter what it is, because that's when you will realize your actual potential. Otherwise, you're just going in circles. So you need awareness, and for that awareness to come, you have to get your soul touched by something. And if your soul has not been touched by anything, then there will be no awareness. If there will be no awareness, there will be no realization. So
I think I think it's a similar thing. Like what comes up for me is I think you only need one thing. And how you get there, that's your own business. You just got to actually want it. Just ask.
Yes.
If you want it, and that's the only thing that's required from this energy, this thing is your participation. Do you want to know? Do you want to connect with this thing? Do you want to seek like truth and connect with something more or not? And if you don't, that's totally cool. Like, you're allowed to do that for as long as you want, but sometimes life will smack you in the face with it, because it's like, no, you need to experience this now. And a lot of people get it through trauma. Some people, you know, a lot of the
Yes.
guests have like almost died. They've had near death experiences. They, you know, survived
Yes.
cancer. And then through that massive catalyst, they're like, oh, and then they're faced all of this stuff within like, you know, a 3-year period, a 1-year period, or one traumatic circumstance that just forces it upon them. And if you don't want
Yes.
it forced upon you, just seek. You know, it's in the Bible, it's everything. Just ask, you know, and then it's your participation, you know, it'll be there if you want it.
So I want to like give a little bit talk about energy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is also one of those words which are used a lot in the spiritual community, but a lot of people don't understand what is energy. Energy is the subtlest aspect of the physical. So when you're looking at existence, the way that it is non-existent, actually. It is nothingness. I will go back to that. So when presence speaks, it is energy. It is what we refer to as pure potential. It is not good or bad. It is not feminine or masculine. It is nothing. It is just pure potential. That is what we call as prana. Prana means pure potential. It means it's not good, it's not bad, it's nothing. It is just potential. It can be manipulated in many, many ways. It can be arranged in many, many ways. And it is only with that pure potential that we see all this mischief in the world. So what you're looking at, what is prana or the life force energy, it is just pure potential. And what you're referring to as kundalini is just unrealized potential. So when we're saying kundalini awakening, we're actually talking about realizing that unrealized potential, realizing that unrealized prana. So that's what it is about. So this is what energy is. Energy is not like this electric thing, this electric force. It's not a force, it's a potential. It can be used for good reasons, it can be used for bad reasons. And what you're referring to as the science of occult, this is what it basically is. It is about managing the geometry of energy. If you can manage the geometry of energy, you can manage the way that it manifests itself, the way that it becomes dense, right? So if you can do that, if you can manage the geometry of the energy, then you can manage reality. I think this will also co-align somewhat with the law of attraction, but not like really align with it. Because there are still aspects, physical activities that you will have to commit yourself to. It's not really just a thought. So that's energy.
I like it. I've never heard that the difference between prana and kundalini before. I really like that. And I think that with our understanding of spirituality, energy, manifestation, what the heck is going on here, purpose, we're refining. You know, it starts very vague, and that's how the search begins. It's you start searching, and it's super. You're in the forest, and then it starts to clear more and more and more as kind of those layers fall off one by one, and you get more clarity and more refinement on the direction and your understanding. So I think with the law of attraction and stuff like that, it ties into what we're talking about here and what you're speaking of. And just sometimes, you know, some people, the way that they're taking it, it's a bit of a miss, you know, it's not a full, well-rounded thing, you know, it's just kind of one
we can
aspect.
say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can say that. It will also feed a lot of egos and make them happy and make them peaceful with what I'm saying, because otherwise I'm going to get a lot of hate.
It'll happen. Yeah.
Thank you so much for neutralizing it.
Yeah, no, it's all right, man. People are pretty cool. Like sometimes I get a comment here and there, but
it is really ironic. It is really ironic how people who practice positive thinking are actually the most negative people.
It does happen. I've seen it. I've seen, what would I say it is? Sometimes in the spiritual community, conscious community, I would just say it's like, I just say it's like people who are aware that it exists and they put on a black belt, and pretend that they have a black belt before they've earned it. You know, I definitely don't think that I have a black belt. I think that I'm trying to earn it. And it's more of the process. It's more of like the play and more of the unfolding. It's, you know, I see spirituality like I see sport and skateboarding, where skateboarding, it could be so fun your entire life and you could suck at it, you know, and I don't think spirituality, it's not meant to be the best at it. There's no best, there's no worst. Alan Watts will talk about the guru contest. Like, my guru is better than your guru and my book is better than your book. And it's just ridiculous when the idea is just to be, you're involved in it. And in skateboarding, it's just to skateboard and it's to be creative and express. And that's what life is. You know, spirituality is your ability. Yeah, go for it. Jump in.
Okay. So you're talking about that you said just that you take spirituality just as you will take sports or skateboarding. Spirituality is not about activity. This is one of the problems in Western spirituality. It's an activity. You do it for 15 minutes of the day and then it's gone. Spirituality is not about an activity. You don't sit there and you meditate and you chant a certain thing, and that's not spirituality. Spirituality means profoundness of experience. You can be, if you're profoundly playing sports, you are doing a spiritual practice. If you're profoundly making tea, you're doing a spiritual process. If you are very profoundly involved in gardening, you are doing a spiritual process. So spirituality is not an activity. So it doesn't have to go back and back. It can go in conjunction with everything else. It enhances everything, right? So spirituality, don't make it an activity. Make it your experience of life.
Yes.
That's the magic.
I 100% agree. And I'm glad that you refine that, because I don't want people to think that when I say skateboarding and I was going to go into skateboarding, sport, martial arts, it's a way of life. It's a way of being. It's in everything, you know, like I don't just do martial arts and it's like, sometimes it's like a way I live my life. Like Bruce Lee was a martial artist and he did martial arts and he practiced it, but it goes into it's how you act. It's exactly right. How you eat, how you interact with people, how you drive your car, how you do there's nothing that is not a spiritual experience. You cannot not have it. You're in it all the time, 24 hours. You know what I mean? Tying your shoes, falling down on your face and being embarrassed.
You know,
spiritual experience.
I was with a spiritual teacher once, and I was talking to him, and he said that shitting is also a very spiritual thing. You know why? It's cleansing. So even if you do that profoundly, it's also a spiritual experience. So there is nothing in your life which is not a spiritual experience. Some way it is aligning with that, because you are unconsciously constantly trying to align with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It reminds me of the four Buddhas. I think there's one sleeping, and then walking, and then drinking and eating and bathroom. There's like, and they're basically like, this is life. You know, what do you do as a human? How any you be? How like in the body experiencing life can you be without any kind of external activity?
Exactly. Also, it reminds me of one of the quotation, like, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment also chop wood and carry water. But now when you will do it, it will be much more profound. So that's the only difference. Spirituality is not about some insane powers or supernatural things. It is just profoundness of experience. It is just about enhancing your life more and more and more till you realize the fullest potential of it. That's all.
Yeah, and you spoke on something earlier, like to that point is to literally allow whatever is happening in your life at that second, every single second as it moves forward, to just fully embrace and accept it. Sometimes are more challenging than others, like hence back in the day and you're going through your thing. Those times you probably don't want to be in there, and they're not going to be the most spiritual experience, but it's just accepting reality as it is and not changing it. And then what you do is you get the ability to respond to that. And what happens is we identify certain circumstances to kind of modify like an image and things like that, and they can get crazy. But I think the point is, if we can really learn to embrace what we're experiencing more without trying to change it, enhance it, dumb it down, liven it up, modify it, just really get into the experience as hard as we can. That's kind of the goal. Those are the kind of the teachings. So what I wanted to ask you, because I got to run, I could talk to you all day.
Okay.
I got to go to a Shokai class, which I'm stoked about. I'm out here in Maine learning with David Lombear Surpass, and it's pretty epic. But so is there anything that you wish that I had asked you, or anything that you want to go in? I do have a little bit of time. You can embellish as long as you'd like. But was there anything that you want to leave the listeners wish, or that you wish that I had asked? We were talking a little bit about some crazy stories at the beginning. You can feel free to share one of those if you want, but you can also keep that close to the chest, because I know a lot of people don't like sharing stuff like that. But anything that you want to share, I'll listen.
The greatest problem with humanity is that we fail to take everybody else as a part of ourselves. That's the biggest problem in humanity. So what you have is dissociation. So if you're living in a Western culture, you cannot relate with the Middle Eastern culture. You're like, oh my God, what is this? But no, there is always some point of relevance. And it's about finding that point of relevance. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to talk about the details because that can put me under scrutiny. But definitely the life here is much more different than the life in any Western country. It is much more reserved. You cannot just go out and just do your thing. That's not the case here. If you do that, you get murdered or you get killed. That this is the reality. This is the base reality. And in any Middle Eastern culture, whether the army does it or the public does it, that's a different question. Sometimes both do it collaboratively. And you can go, it's happening in Iran, it's happening in Iraq, it's happening everywhere. Everywhere in the Middle East, it's happening. But it doesn't get reported that often. But it's actually very, very dark. So what you're having is people sitting in their air-conditioned rooms in Europe, and they're talking about the new world. They're talking about the bliss. I am me sitting here in this position. I am talking about the great split. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the new world, as if everything is just going to transform itself by like this. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying we are headed to an extreme amount of split, where one aspect of the world is just like a new world, where it is an awakened world. It is a world where everyone is loved and respected and stuff. And then there is an other aspect of the world, which simply doesn't line up with that. So, and that in the short term is going to be much dark. The way that it is going to express it is going to be extremely dark. We can end, which is basically like a teaching. What is my message to the viewers? What is my one core teaching? It is just this. Don't look down on anybody. Don't look up to anything. Just see things the way that they are. Just see them the way that they are. Don't sugarcoat them. Don't make them anything that they are not. Don't imagine things about them. Simply accept it the way that it is. And it is about, if you're hurting, if you're in pain, even in that sphere, it is just about acceptance. It is just about acknowledgement. You just have to accept and acknowledge your emotional self. You have to cater to your baby self. That's all. And I mean, it is actually like really, really hard and even scary at times, because what you're experiencing is like not aligning with what you want to experience. So what I am trying to do is, by telling you that you have to accept it and acknowledge it, is that I'm trying to bring you in a space where you can actually shift that experience for you. But for that to happen, first you have to recognize it. You have to accept it the way that it is. You have to embrace it the way that it is. And you resolve the cause and you create a distance. If there is no distance within you and your emotions, within you and your thought, the moment you will have an angry thought, your anger will become the very root of your existence. It will become your reality. If there is no distance, if you're afraid, then your experience of reality will become fear. If you're sad, then your experience of reality will become sadness. If you're depressed, your experience of reality will become that. So whatever your experience of reality is, will mimic your emotions if there is no distance. But when distance comes, you can choose. You are at this like choice point where you can choose if I want to express this emotion or I want to resolve this emotion. Or, for example, if a thought comes in your mind, a suicidal thought, it will just be another thought. It will not be an experiential reality for you. It should not be an experiential reality for you. It should only be another thought. If it is just another thought, it can come and go. But if it is an experiential reality, you can get out of it. That's when you need pills. So create that distance between yourself and your thought. Whenever a thought comes, just acknowledge it and see whether I want to apply this thought or not. If you don't want to apply this thought, let it come and let it go. Whenever an emotion comes, just see this, whether I want to apply it or not. If you want to apply it, apply it. If you don't want to apply it, let it go. So this is about gaining control of your life. I'm not going into the deeper mystical aspects. I definitely want to do that more in the future, but like it will be very difficult to put it all in 2 to 3 minutes or 2 to 3 teachings, because it's not a teaching. It is something else. So what I'm focusing on is healing process. So that's it. That's all that I have. Just create a distance between yourself and your thought, create a distance between yourself and your emotions, and create a distance between yourself and your identities. And then you will be able to see what is happening in the Middle East without judgment, without exaggeration. Right now, there is either judgment or there is exaggeration. There is no pure awareness. So bring that pure awareness, which does not judge, which does not exaggerate, which simply accepts. That's all.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. It's an epic close. I appreciate you and your words, and I appreciate your courage to speak out and speak your truth. And, you know, from what I know personally of us having that little chat before, I admire your courage to overcome and to share this message and make an impact where you are. And I'm glad to share this with others. I know that people can find you on Instagram, where you do lots of writing, Spirit by Alamir. And your website is alamirofficial.com.
Yes.
And people can find you there if they want to get a hold of you?
Exactly.
Right on. Okay, man. Well, it's a pleasure. Definitely stay in touch. Let me know if I can support you in any way with where you are, but I appreciate you coming on with those words. It was super deep, and that's my favorite thing, is to go as deep as possible. And you stayed there you started there and you stayed there, which is epic. So I appreciate you for that, and sending you lots of love and gratitude, man. And let's stay connected.
Thank you. I wish you much love and blessings too. And I will end this with something that I end all of my posts with. May we all heal, may we all be free, may we all be ourselves. So have a good week.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for watching. Catch you in the next one.